So good morning, everyone, and welcome from the Senior Law Day Collaborative. We're here today to talk about the webinar topic, Are You Looking to Sell Your Home in the Midst of COVID-19, Challenges and Alternatives? I'm Elena Falcone. I'm the Director of Public Innovation and Engagement at the Westchester Library System. And I'm here today with my co-chairs of the Senior Law Day Collaborative. I share that role with Sarah Steckler of Keene and Bean and Melinda Bellis of Legal Services of Hudson Valley. Joining us today is also our marketing consultant, Bruce Siegel of Marketing Sense, and today's presenters, Alfie Schloss and John Steckler, who I'll introduce in a few moments. Before we get started, I want to give you a little bit of information about the Senior Law Day Collaborative. The collaborative is composed of more than 160 professionals who are all eager to bring authoritative information on legal, financial, and health topics to our county's older adults, especially in these challenging times. The collaborative, which has been active for more than 20 years, has a website that I'd like to show you. Let me go ahead and use the magic of Zoom to share my screen. So colleagues, confirm that you can see my screen. Okay. So this is a website called seniorlawday.info. It is a core resource for the program, and today and after today, I hope you'll bookmark this site and know to return to it for a couple of good reasons. You see across the top that we have simple navigation. Maybe 2 or 3 key things. There's a calendar where you can find all of our events, all of our webinars, as well as what I hope will be sometime not too distant future, our live full-day programs and events at public libraries. Every 2020 webinar that we've done so far, there's been about 6 or 7 of them, are all posted on this website. So within about a day of recording, you can get access to any presentation materials and the actual full video recording. You'll also notice that the full video recording of the latest one is always posted to the homepage. You can come right down here and nab that, and you can also see here registration links for all of the upcoming programs. Also on this website, something I'm really happy to point out in English and in Spanish is the Elder Law Q&A. This is a sort of a key resource that the Senior Law Day Collaborative publishes. It is something that you can refer to on all of these topics in elder law, healthcare planning, wills, taxes, Medicare, long-term care insurance. So it has a fairly robust set of appendices and is a resource that I know you'll be able to use in the future. Finally, a key thing that I want to point out, we have an Ask Us button here. So today, after today, months from now, you can come here and click on that button and tap the knowledge and expertise and concerned interest of those 160 Senior Law Day Collaborative members. You can ask your question. We will email you back or give you a phone call back within about two business days, if not sooner. So feel free to come back and ask us questions. All right, so with that, before I go over to our presenters, the other thing I want to sort of call out is how we operate in the space that we're in today on Zoom. So this session is being recorded, so be aware of that. But you, in fact, are anonymous to the folks who are viewing the presentation. You are muted during this webinar, but you can be heard. There is a Q&A feature at the bottom of your panel that should allow you to send us a question. We will know who's asking the question unless you ask it anonymously. That actually works out pretty well, because if we don't get to answer your question during the session, we have the ability to follow up with you. So all questions will be answered. And if a question comes up after the event, what are you going to do? You're going to go to seniorlawday.info. You're going to click on that Ask Us button, and then you'll be able to get your question answered. So with that, I'm going to turn it over. Which of you is going first? Alfie or John?
I think we decided I would go first yesterday.
All right, rock, paper, scissors. Okay, John, you get it.
Okay, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here today. And we're going to be talking about, are you looking to sell your home in the midst of COVID-19? I want to start off by saying that I was the owner of my own business for 30 years in the Scarsdale area. And then last year, a year and a half ago, we merged with Berkshire Hathaway. And I'm now working out of the Scarsdale office at Fort Chase Road. So basically, I'm going to touch on the steps of getting your house ready, listing it, and going to the closing table. The first step, once you've decided that you want to sell your home, will be to have a realtor walk through the property to take a look at it. After that, he or she will be able to estimate value using comparable sales in your area. Value can also be calculated by using an average price per square foot. What we do through the multiple listing service, we're able to pick similar homes in your neighborhood and pretty much calculate a very good price for it. If your home is all fixed up, if it's everything is new, we adjust upwards. If it's in an original condition, we adjust downwards. But we come pretty close, and I know because sometimes other brokers have gone in and we all come up with close to the same price. So the MLS statistics very helpful for us. Before putting the house in the market, we would recommend using a stager to improve the home's appearance. Before the photographer goes through. Other things you can do would be paint in classic neutral colors, declutter the house, have appliances in good working order, repair leaky faucets and cracked windows, and spruce up your lawn and garden. Last year I had a listing in White Plains, and it was in a state, and I went to look at it, and the first thing when I walked through the door was this house was very musty. They had original carpeting in the house, and it just didn't show well. And I told them that if they did nothing, the house would probably sell for about $600,000. So I provided them with a contractor who stripped the floors, painted, and then they decided midway through that they would put a new kitchen in, and then they staged it. The living room, dining room, and kitchen were staged, and the house ended up selling for mid-sevens. So they did much better preparing it for sale than if they had just left it in the original condition. So then when you're ready to list, the forms needed are the listing agreement, the lead disclosure, the agency disclosure, and just recently required by New York State, a COVID-19 showings advisory and agreement. I believe that'll be attached for your records later on after the webinar. This last document states that for the present time being, real estate agents can show a home virtually by FaceTime or Zoom. And then if the party's interested, we can arrange a personal showing. Personal showing can only be done at this time if the owner or one of their family members or a friend that's designated by them meet the buyer and let them into the house. Brokers are not allowed personal contact at this time. But the rest of it, will be turned over to negotiations. We'll do the rest of the, mediating between the parties and come up with a deal. During those showings, buyers will be asked to wear face masks, gloves, and booties, and instructed not to touch anything. When all the paperwork is completed, the property will be listed on the One Key MLS, and professional photos will be posted, along with any virtual tour content and floor plans. Your listing will automatically appear on Zillow, Trulia, Realtor.com, and many other sites. Showings will be scheduled until a buyer is found, and the house will continue to be shown until a contract is signed. Buyers must produce a pre-approval document from a lender and proof of funds for the down payment, or if it's an all-cash deal. The realtor will open the property for a home inspector, and if there are no issues, the contract will be drawn. Then at this time, both the buyer and seller shall provide the name and contact info for their lawyers. The buyer, in most cases, will sign the contract first, and then return it with a 10% down payment to be held by the seller's attorney in an escrow account. After the contract is fully signed, the buyer will apply to a lender for a mortgage. After the application is reviewed, the bank will send an appraiser to see the house and place a value on the property. If the property appraises, the next step is the loan commitment. The two parties can schedule closing after the written commitment is in hand. And then at the closing, right now it's limited in terms of it's essential people. So I think that the attorneys, the title person, and the payoff loan will be there, but I don't think the broker is not allowed to be there, and it's questionable if the buyers and sellers can be there. But I think we have some legal experts here that could shed some more light on that. So if there's anything else, any questions, I'll be happy to take them.
Okay, so John, one question that came in was if the homeowner allows the potential buyer into the house, taking all precautions, can they have you or their broker on FaceTime with them, walking through the home and giving them guidance on what they should be looking for, if they should be, and to know what they should be asking the homeowner?
Well, traditionally, our role has been to show them the house and, point out everything. But right now, we're not allowed to have personal contact with a buyer. So we can't be there when they go through the house at this time until that's lifted.
Well, the question is, can they have you on FaceTime with them? So
Sure.
You're their virtual agent in their pocket.
Yes, that's permitted.
And what sort of things would you help them look at in the house, from floors to hot water heaters? What should someone be paying attention to, especially if they're a senior buyer in the home?
Well, I think the first thing is they should really just go through the house to see if they like it, if it suits them. If they do like it, then I think there'd be a second showing and we could go over, and scrutinize everything. But that's really the role of a home inspector, is to point out, age of the furnace and, what deficiencies the house might have. But, we can, advise them on condition and what it would take to fix it up and what it might need.
John?
Thank you.
Sorry. Oh, from your perspective, and I'm really curious, what are the pros and cons to this environment, to doing this? I mean, virtually. We've had the virtual walkthroughs online for a while, but how do you feel this is a challenge for the seller and a challenge for the buyer?
Well, it is a challenge. Hopefully we'll get back to some normalcy soon, but right now this is the only way we're allowed to show the house. We can do a virtual showing, or we could tape a virtual showing and send a link to a prospective buyer. And then if there's interest, we can arrange to have them go into the house and take a look at it. It's a little different, but hopefully we'll get through this and get back to normal by next year.
We have a question that just came in from one of our participants saying, are people keeping properties off the market now? I'm looking for condos and not many are showing up.
Yes, there is a dip in the listing activity from last year. Prices actually are a little up because of lack of inventory. Those houses that are coming on are selling fairly quickly in the under $1 million range. And, so it's just less out there. I think some people are waiting because they don't want people in their house. Others, maybe they don't know where they're going to go to, but those that are coming on are getting good action.
Are you seeing that there's how is pricing expected to be influenced? One question asks, are the prices expected to trend up or down? I mean, do you see any changes coming? All those people who were holding out in terms of selling, now there's going to be a flood in the market at some point.
Well, right now, for the first quarter for 2020, the prices were higher than 2019.
Okay.
Another question that came in is it any different to sell a house out of a trust or an estate rather than if I was selling it myself?
That's very similar. Instead of the actual seller signing the closing papers, it would be the trustee or power of attorney.
And who gets paid at closing?
I mean,
if it's out of an estate or a trustee?
Well, it goes to the estate and the trustees. They get paid like the seller would if it's an estate.
And does the executor in a will need to wait to sign a listing agreement, or can that be done before they're appointed? Can they sign it as a nominated executor, or do they have to be the executor and show you papers to list a house?
I'm not sure. Sorry about that one.
Okay. I know it's a company policy.
So we have no other Q&A right now. So I guess we can turn this over to Alfie.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, John.
Thanks, John. Good morning, everyone. As you heard when Elena read my bio, I'm not only the president of the Hair Club for Men, I'm also a Hair Club for Men user. It's the old commercial for the Hair Club. I actually have a reverse mortgage on my home. The biggest issue that people have in regard to their home and why they're selling it or why they're leaving it is the cost of living in it, taxes, insurance, maintenance of the home. A lot of the people I am referred to, their question is, where am I going to go? What, I don't have any place that I want to be. I love my house, but I can't really afford to live here. So the issue really is, how do you accomplish that? For me personally, for my wife and I, we don't have long-term care insurance. For medical reason that I had a brain aneurysm back in 2009 and was unable to get insured. The result of that is that we're using a reverse mortgage or a HECM, a home equity conversion mortgage, as our way of ensuring long-term care. It also gives us available cash if we need money for taxes, if we need money for repairs, if we have an emergency of any sort. So the reason I like the product and the reason I'm so passionate about it is because it's flexible and it gives people the ability to age in place if that's where they want to be. I personally live in a ranch. We moved here in 1999 from a previous home that we had, which was also a ranch, because our thinking was this was the only house we were ever going to live in, and we didn't want to leave it. And if we had an issue with being able to stay in the house because we couldn't climb stairs, or we needed, or one of us was in a wheelchair, we wanted to be able to have the ability to stay in the house. And again, that's really the key for me in terms of why people do reverse mortgages. Is the first question I ask people is, do you want to stay in the house? What is your exit strategy from this house? Do you plan to stay here? Do you plan to move? If you're planning to move in a few years, this is an expensive way to finance a few years in the house. Though every once in a while it comes up that, and in fact, Sarah and I recently, I actually recently worked with a client of Sarah's, Sarah Steckler's, where the reason they got the reverse mortgage was it was a couple. The wife had dementia, was in an assisted living facility that had memory care. The husband was living in the house, but really wanted to live with be with his wife in the facility, in the community, though not in the same place, obviously, because he did not have dementia. So the reason they did the reverse mortgage was to pay the entry fee into for him into the community, and to and if Sarah's still on, she can correct me, but and then when in the interim, use the rest of the funds to stage the house, to repair the house, to make it ready for sale, and that when and then when the house was ready for sale, it would be sold. And in fact, I believe, John, you are the listing agent on that house now. So again, it's a means to an end, and it's an expense. In that particular case, it was an expensive means to an end, but it worked out, and it's working out. And I think it was the correct thing to do. But I want to just go through. I'm going to share my screen now so I can show you some ideas about the product, and so you understand it a little better. Okay. There we go. Whoop, went too far. Went too fast. Okay, so well, actually, let me go back. All right, so first of all, my name is Alfie Schloss. I've been doing reverse mortgages actually for almost 16 years now. I haven't updated my my bio, and I'm a licensed loan officer with American Advisors Group, AAG. As you can see over my shoulder here, our spokesperson is Tom Selleck, which I'm sure you've seen on television. My contact information will be available at the end. So I want to explain what a HECM, what a reverse mortgage is, what the obligations are, what's a proprietary product, how does it work, why people do it, and talk about HECM for purchase, which is another product which helps people move on. So real quickly, there are two types of reverse mortgages: the home equity conversion mortgage, or the HECM, which is the HUD insured version of a reverse mortgage and the most popular one. And then there are proprietary reverse mortgages, which is called the AAG Advantage, or in New York, it's called the Home Safe, which is a cash out reverse mortgage, which is different than the HECM. The borrowers have to be 62 years of age at closing. They can access some of their home equity and never have to make loan payments as long as they live in the home, repayments as long as they live in the home. You retain ownership. There's no personal liability to repay beyond the value of the property lien. And the loan becomes due and payable when the last borrower permanently leaves the home, okay? Opposed to a mortgage, it requires less documentation than a mortgage or a HELOC. There's no requirement to make repayment during the life, which we said before, and there's no prepayment penalty. Borrowers may make payments. Repayment is applied first to mortgage insurance, which all these loans have annual mortgage insurance, and then there's interest, and finally principal. The HECM adjustable loan, which is what I have, and primarily I would say 99% of all the loans I do are what are called the CAP 5, or the annual adjusting version of the loan. And but it can be paid back, and anything that's paid back gets added to the borrower's line of credit, where it'll enjoy compound growth. We can do this for owner-occupied 1 to 4 family homes, FHA-approved condos, PUDs, or manufactured homes on owned land. We cannot do co-ops, vacation homes, or single-wide manufactured homes. And the valuations are based on FHA appraisals. As a borrower, you're required to pay your property taxes, insure the home, and maintain the home. You have to live there, pay your taxes, your insurance, and maintain the home. And the loan becomes due and payable when the last borrower or eligible non-borrowing surviving spouse dies, sells the home, permanently moves out, defaults on taxes or insurance payments, or does not otherwise comply with the loan terms.
I just want to jump in because we have a quick question for you. What is a FHA appraisal? Would you mind just explaining what that means?
Well, there are appraisers, there are different levels of appraisal, but FHA appraisers are specifically licensed and vetted by FHA, and they have stricter guidelines than regular appraisers, and the appraisals are based almost entirely on recent sales, on comparable sales. So if you live in a colonial, you won't get comparable sales of ranches, and if you live in a condo or a PUD, you'll only be compared to condos or PUDs. At the current time, FHA is, because of COVID-19, is not having internal appraisals done. So all the appraisals are drive-bys currently, and the borrowers have the option of allowing the appraiser in, but for safety factor. But the key thing about an FHA appraisal is there cannot be any safety issues in the home. So for instance, peeling paint, lead paint is a problem. If there aren't handrails on the stairs, it's a problem. So one of the things I typically do is walk through the home with the borrower to let them know about things that may not meet minimum FHA standards that could easily be remedied by having a handyman come in and take care of something that would ordinarily cause a problem with the appraisal. But there have to be handrails on stairs, there have to be smoke and carbon monoxide detectors, and there can't be peeling paint, and any other safety issue is a problem. So for instance, if your home is, if in the backyard of your home, you have a tower for high tension power lines, your home may not meet minimum FHA standards unless we get, unless there's a letter from the utility company stating that they will indemnify. That's a problem. I remember one loan that I tried to do years ago. This was an eye-opener. I was referred to a gentleman who had a stunning home on the Hudson River in Stony Point. It literally was on the river. So when I drove up to the property and pulled in, I was just enamored with the view that he was actually on the water. And I didn't really look around at the rest of the property. Well, it turns out next to his home, the town had illegally sold the property next door to an oil depot. And there were two 10,000-gallon tanks of oil storage within 50 feet of his home, which did not meet minimum FHA standards. And as a result, he could not get the reverse mortgage, which we only found out after the appraiser came to the home, because I didn't look at the property next door. I was just looking at his view in his house, which for all intents and purposes did meet the minimum FHA standards. The difference between the AAG Advantage or the Home Safe loan, which is what it's called in New York, is that it's just like the HECM, but it's a cash out refi. So if your home is worth $4 million, you may be able to cash out a third to a half of that equity. You would have to take it as a lump sum. So for instance, if you had a $2 million home and you had a $750,000 mortgage on it, you could pay off that mortgage and not have to make mortgage payments anymore with that loan. So it's just another option for people in New York now that was not available before, and we've been doing them in New Jersey and Connecticut for quite a while. The proceeds from a reverse mortgage are not considered income, so they're for all intents and purposes tax-free, though we recommend that you talk to your accountant and your attorney and Medicaid could be an issue. And one of the reasons, one of the things that we do is work with a lot of elder law attorneys in regard to using trusts. So we do these loans with homes in life estates and trusts, revocable and irrevocable, but there's special requirements and often an amendment to the trust may be necessary to be able to qualify the property. And I have trust guidelines, and if you're working with attorneys, by all means have them reach out to me regarding making sure that we can do that. And we do a trust review at no cost to the borrower, upfront cost to the borrower, to make sure that the home will be able to be given a reverse mortgage. And the monies from a reverse mortgage are not considered income, so you can still be on Medicaid, you can get SNAP, any kind of entitlement, including heating help. With incapacitated borrowers, we can use a power of attorney can be do the reverse mortgage, but we do need a doctor's letter stating that the borrower had capacity when they signed the power of attorney, and we need a diagnosis to make sure that they actually are incapacitated from a doctor. And if somebody's frail, we can actually have the POA sign documents except for the physical application and the counseling certificate. And there is a requirement for counseling before someone can apply, and that's one of the key things of safety for borrowers, that they have to attend the counseling session, which is usually done by telephone. to make sure that they're not being bamboozled, that it's actually appropriate for them. So why do people do these? The primary reason, well, people use them to pay off an existing mortgage, to create liquidity, to create a standby revolving cash reserve. Right now, people, with what's gone on with COVID-19 and the stock market reaction and the, essentially huge losses that have taken place, it's not a good time to be taking money out of your investments. So you want to, if you need money to live on, rather than taking money out of your investments and selling them in a down market, it's a better idea to use the reverse mortgage money, which is relatively inexpensive to use, and tax-free, to be able to add income. You can also get monthly income from a reverse mortgage. There's an ability to use what's called 10-year monthly payment, TENURE, that's akin to an annuity without the cost of an annuity. Pay your property taxes. The biggest cost of living for people living in a home in Westchester, and one of the reasons they are selling them is because of the property taxes. But you can pay your property taxes by taking the money out of the reverse mortgage money to pay your taxes and still stay in your home. Make home repairs, improvements, widen doorways, put in a walk-in tub or a walk-in shower, put grab bars, widen doors for someone in a wheelchair, ramps. A lot of people have gotten long-term care insurance. The premiums keep going up. If you've been paying into long-term care insurance for decades or a decade or so, and the bill goes up, if you stop making that payment, you've lost all that money that you've put into that long-term care insurance policy. Use the reverse mortgage to pay the premiums. This way you have coverage in case you need to go to a nursing home, in case you need someone to come in and take care of you. Purchase a new home. In other words, I just want to tell one quick story. This is a loan that I did here in Rockland not too long ago. Couple was selling their home in Muncie for $655,000. The husband had lost his job and was working as a consultant, and because of the job loss, didn't qualify for a mortgage. They were staying in Rockland. They were downsizing to a home that they were buying for $450,000, and the whole deal, the realtor was in trouble because the whole deal was going up in smoke because they couldn't sell the house unless they had the place to go, and they couldn't pay off the mortgage that they had. They actually had a mortgage that they had to pay off on the house that was worth $655,000. So they didn't have enough, and so none of the pieces wouldn't work, because in order to buy the $450,000 home that they wanted to move to, they did not have enough funds. They needed a mortgage. So what we were able to do is, by doing what's called a HECM for purchase, or reverse mortgage for purchase, we were able to do a simultaneous closing where they sold their house in the morning, walked away with $295,000 in proceeds from the sale after paying off their mortgage, paying the attorney's fees, paying the realtor's commissions. And then in the afternoon, we closed on the purchase of the $450,000 home in Spring Valley, and used a HECM for purchase to make up the difference. Actually, they only brought $210,000 of the $290,000 that they walked away from, and the rest was paid for with the reverse mortgage, and they were able to buy the new home and take possession of it. And in fact, what they've been doing is making monthly payments on the reverse mortgage as if it was a mortgage. So again, it's a flexible product. We have a lot of different solutions. So you can actually, and in fact, I've done loans where people have gone from selling their home and then buying an even more expensive retirement home in a 55 and over community, that they made up the difference with the reverse mortgage for purchase. And then there's paying for travel, estate planning, delay take. I personally am 68 years old. I'm not taking Social Security till age 70 because I'm getting an 8% increase every year from Social Security. I'll have more money, a better death benefit if I predecease my wife, because it's the higher of the two Social Securities. And then helping one's grandchildren and children. Basically, the idea is to improve one's quality of life, and that's really the key to it. The option other than a reverse mortgage is to get a HELOC or home equity loan, line of credit. The problem with that is that right now, for instance, Chase has stopped making them, and many other banks are stopping making them because of the financial crisis. And they only last 10 years, and you have to make monthly payments. Whereas with the reverse mortgage, there's no end to it until you sell or leave the home permanently, and there's no prepayment penalty, and there's a lot of benefits. Yes, it's more expensive, but you have to weigh the benefit versus the solution. I think I was going to show, I wanted to show a sample loan real quickly. So I talked about the HECM for purchase, which is being able to buy a home. So if you were selling your home and you were buying a $600,000 home and you wanted to use a reverse mortgage, we would be able to provide you with, so the amount that you could borrow is $317,400. The cost of doing that loan would be mortgage insurance that the government get, which is 2%, $12,000, an origination fee, which is how AAG gets paid, and then other closing costs, which include title insurance for the lender, title insurance for the buyer, the appraisal, the title fees, the closing attorneys, all those costs that would be normal in purchasing a home, they have to be taken. So the amount that's available, $284,674 towards buying a $600,000 home, the borrower would have to bring $315,000, $325,000 to closing, and the rest would be financed. So, and to just give you an idea of the interest rates, so on this particular loan, the interest rate would be 3.28%. The APR would be 3.78%. So if they were making a payment on this loan, they would be paying basically 3.78%. But what's wonderful about it is if you were making a payment to repay the loan, if you paid back $1,000 or $2,000 a month, not only would you be reducing what you owe, but that money would be going into a line of credit that would be available to you if you needed it in the future. And that line of credit would grow at 3.78% as well, what's left in there. So there's a lot of really interesting concepts around this. And I don't want to go into too much detail, but if there are any questions, I'd be happy to ask them.
Okay, thank you, Alfie. So one of the questions we have is, how does someone find you? Because getting a reverse mortgage is a new concept for me. So how would I even look to find a reverse mortgage broker to talk to about this? And would you also talk to my accountant?
Okay. Well, the answer is I've been doing this in this area for almost 16 years now. I'm with American Advisors Group. There's my contact information. I'll make it large. Okay. I'm not a broker. I'm actually an employee of American Advisors Group. I'm a mortgage banker. AAG is the largest reverse mortgage lender. We do about 1/3 of all reverse mortgages in the country. And we also service the loans. So that's how you get in touch with me. And I'm very accessible. I return all my calls within the same day. And nowadays, with not being able to go to people's homes, we're doing a lot of this by Zoom, and having meetings. I've actually had COVID-19, so I'm actually not dangerous to people, but and I'm not being endangered by people, but I'm still taking precautions, but I'm not going to people's homes. Though when I leave this webinar, I'm going to a closing in White Plains, and unfortunately, the closings must be attended by 2 attorneys, and I will be there to make sure that everybody stays apart, and actually doing the closing in the people's driveway. I'm bringing a table and chairs, and everyone's sitting outside wearing masks and gloves, and we'll be using a rake to move documents around like a croupier at a casino.
Wow.
I'm gonna stop sharing now. Hopefully everyone's taken down the information.
Thank you.
Okay, Alfie. Well, we're so glad that you're feeling better and that you were able to join us today. And that's really terrific news. So another question about reverse mortgages that came in is, why don't more people take advantage of them if they're so flexible?
It's a misunderstood product. There's a lot of word on the street, bad juju. Initially, reverse mortgages, when they started back in the 1960s, they were predatory loans. They were predatory loans until 1988, when Congress passed the legislation that allowed the HECM program to exist. The HECM program basically has ensured that that people are safe doing this, and the counseling is required. There's now protection for non-borrowing spouses, which was one of the abuses. But you still have to be careful. You have to work with reputable companies, and you have to work with reputable people. And I always recommend that people shop because there are differences, and you have to, you get what you pay for. And I personally believe that my goal has always been to make sure that my borrower, that my client, is getting the best deal and getting the most bang for the buck, and having the least cost. And I try to involve the children, because ultimately the parents getting the reverse mortgage is going to affect them more so than the parents.
Okay. Thank you, Alfie. So John, we have a question that came in for you. Do realtors provide guidance regarding the selling of valuable antique furniture and small other items? How much guidance can be expected from the real estate broker? How does one find the broker who is knowledgeable regarding these things?
Well, two things. One, I think we would refer the client to an expert, an art appraiser, a furniture appraiser. And I can tell you from experience, last year we had to sell my mother's estate, and she had all this old furniture from that her grandmother bought from the Gould estate back in the earlier part of the century, and it was ball and claw, feet on the legs of the couches, and ornately carved chairs. And so we called in. We were recommended by an appraiser from Connecticut, who came in, and even though everything was reupholstered and beautiful, he said there really wasn't much of a market for wood furniture. People are going for modern today, glass, leather. And we were disappointed. I thought we were going to sell each piece for a fortune. And we got a second opinion. And a beautiful couch I thought could be worth thousands. He said, maybe you'll get $300 for it. So my sister and I decided to do the estate sale ourselves, because I've seen other people who use tag sale companies, and at the end of the day, everything is still sitting in the house because it's priced too high. So we had 4 different weekends, and we were able to sell almost the entire contents of the house, and without paying any, commissions. And it worked out great. We found people who like the old furniture and all the little smaller items. We also had art, which was appraised, and we ended up selling a number of paintings. And some of them, which were dealers, they actually reappeared on, for double the price on art websites. So, in terms to answer your question, we're in a position to recommend experts in either art appraisal, furniture appraisal. If you need a contractor, if you need a tax reduction specialist, we advise you to use, experts in their field.
John, thank you for bringing your expertise to bear in that question. So we just have to ask, and you'll direct us. I have two more for Alfie. Alfie, one that just came in. How long does the process of getting a reverse mortgage typically take?
Generally, it takes, it's a little more complicated in New York now, but generally about 2 months. In New York now, you have, there's an affidavit that has to be signed, which is a counseling affidavit, has to be notarized before we can do any, order any services. So, and then there's the counseling. It can take anywhere from, we give people a list of counseling agencies to call to make an appointment for the counseling. So depending on how long it takes for them to get the counseling, but from the time that we do an application to closing, unless there's some issue, is generally within 35 to 60 days, generally 45 days, maybe 60 days. And it's pretty innocuous. We have the appraisal, we do a title search, we do run credit, though credit scores are not an issue. But that's generally it. Was there a second question?
Well, there's a follow-up to that then. So I've just learned so much today about reverse mortgages. I had the 1960s, mental impression of these. And you talked about that one example of someone sort of trying to sell their house in order to buy a house.
Yeah.
They probably didn't have a reverse mortgage on their radar when they were entering this in the first place. So this adds about 2 months to the whole process.
Well, in the case of a purchase, we streamline it. We really make it as fast as possible. But we need to have a contract of sale. In that particular case, it was. You see this gray hair? It was that loan.
Wow.
I was actually on a cruise, and I spent more than my commission on ship-to-shore phone calls because there's so many moving parts in a purchase when you have a sale and a purchase that and most attorneys don't understand reverse mortgages, unfortunately. It requires an enormous amount of detail, but I was able to massage things to place. Generally, we get a purchase loan done within 30 days of receiving the contract.
So who raises the possibility? The broker?
In the particular case, the one that I was talking about, it was the realtor who knew of me and brought me in to meet with their client to see about doing this. And then I had to, really convince those people that this was the way that we could do this loan and tell them we will get this done because I can qualify you based on what income you do have, and you will be able to do this.
And that was specific to the purchase.
It was, yeah. So every situation is different. I'm going to go do an assessment of the people's ability to qualify for the loan before we do anything. And we work very quickly because we realize with purchases that it's very sensitive, and there has to be a lot of communication because there's a buyer's attorney, a seller's attorney, and we want to make sure, title company want to make sure that everybody's on board and understands that this is not your typical transaction, and it's going to, and that it's going to fund at the closing table. Whereas with a regular reverse mortgage, there's a 3-day rescission period. With a reverse mortgage for purchase, it funds at the closing table.
So there's one last question that came in. I'm mindful of everyone's time. It sounds like you have to have a consultation because all circumstances are different.
Oh,
but
yeah.
Is there anyone, or are there any clear statements of you really are not the candidate for a reverse mortgage if you're in this situation? Like what are the clear downsides?
Well, the downsides are if you're not planning to live in the house for at least 3 to 5 years, don't do it because the cost is rather significant in terms of equity, hit on your equity. If you're, again, I before I even consider it for someone, I want to know what their income is, what their savings, what their, I'm going to go through a whole laundry list to figure out what their cost of living is, what their income is. They need to have a residual income beyond what they need to pay their we have to show that they have the ability and the willingness to pay their taxes and insurance. And if they've been late on paying their taxes and insurance, then we're required to set up a fund from the proceeds to pay it for them. So if they don't qualify from that standpoint, if there's not enough money to do that, the whole loan may not work. So we do that all up front. There's no cost to the borrowers for us to do that kind of assessment. And we just, we'll run the credit. Nothing, there's no out-of-pocket cost for a borrower on a reverse mortgage until they sign an application. And then the only out-of-pocket cost they're going to have is to pay for an appraisal.
So the point is it pays to ask, because it's not going to cost you to do that.
Do a consultation, because if you think you know what a reverse mortgage is, you don't.
You probably don't. Sarah, I know we've got another question. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Alfie.
Okay, so John, we have a very unique question for you. We have a participant who's looking into buying a co-op or a condo, and they have a dog, and they want to know if you as their broker would be able to help them get their dog approved.
Or appraised.
As long as he sits and, begs. There's strict rules. It's a yes or no. Either pets are permitted or they're not permitted. Some are restricted weight. So it's really up to the rules of the building.
Can't bend that rule.
Okay.
Right, John, we didn't have an opportunity for your contact information to pop up, and I'm hoping my colleague Bruce can share that. And I want to mention, as that's being shared, the seniorlawday.info website is available to everyone to ask additional questions today and in the months and weeks ahead. And we'll also have posted the materials that were shared by John and Alfie, who did a great job of educating all of us today. So thank you very much for your time on behalf of the Senior Law Day Collaborative.
You're welcome.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
There goes our Senior Law Day website. All right, thank you very much.